Can anyone see it roughly? Okay. So he's going to go ahead and introduce us a little bit.
Right, so my name is James Rosone. My wife, Miranda Watson. We write under pen names, just, you know, in case anyone's wondering. I highly recommend, if you are not published your first book, to consider potentially using a pen name. You may not think you need it right now. Maybe you don't. Maybe you want to be associated with your real name to whatever you're going to write in the future. But I would encourage you to also think about the future. Think about 5, 7, 10 years down the road. Think about the topics and genres and things you want to write. And if you want to have a lot of just random people messaging you on social media, following you, suddenly they're your new best friends, all kinds of things like that, there are benefits and pros and cons to having a pen name and be able to be somewhat separated from things like that.
There's some weird people on the internet, y'all.
So my background, I used to work, I was started in the Army first, and then when I finished college, I had this wild idea, I wanted to go into the Air Force and change branches. It was a crazy mistake to do. And found myself working in some really unique intelligence positions during the Iraq War. I was a military interrogator. My job was to sit down with al-Qaeda terrorists day in, day out with some really evil, heinous people that just grill them and get in trouble. So that was a really tough job to do for many years. And then when I left the military, I went into contracting and went back to Iraq for a couple more years because I was glutton for punishment. And eventually found myself living in Germany for a number of years, working for the DoD over there before coming back home. And for me, I got into writing as PTSD therapy for me. That's how I originally got into it, because when life slows down and you're no longer working those 80 hours a week, hunting terrorists and doing that Jack Bauer stuff for a long time, you suddenly realize and think about what you've been doing for the last 10 years, and that's when it kind of hits you. So we got into writing I started writing in the summer of 2015. My first book I published, we actually did with a publisher. It was not a very good or reputable publisher. It was back in 2019. I took my journal from Iraq and turned it into a memoir. That did not go anywhere, do very well, and eventually we did get those rights back. But we started self-publishing in 2015. That's when I put the pre-order up for December 31st, and I started writing the book. I had no idea what I was doing. You just don't know what you don't know. And this was 2015, before 20Books page was around. I didn't even find out about the 20Books page until probably 2018, 2019. I joined Mark Dawson's SPF group in 2017, so it was 1 year and a half after we started writing. There's a lot you just don't know. And so I started writing it. My wife agreed to edit my book reluctantly. I looked at that and went, oh my God, this is crazy, nobody's going to buy this. But we went ahead and published it, and lo and behold, we started selling a couple of copies. And we're like, this is crazy, people are buying this thing. And people were buying more of it. And so we put a second book up for pre-order in the series, and we started getting a lot of pre-orders with them. And started to really kind of take off. And our big challenge was, how do we make this work? Because I read the book, and slam it on her to try and edit. She tried to make changes, and I'd be like, you can't change that. I was writing military war books, at the end of the day.
It's my baby.
And at the end of the day, one of the counselors at the VA said, well, look at writing therapy. That's what I write. Well, write what you want to read. It's like, duh. It dawned on me, wow, write a book I want to read. Okay, so I started writing the kinds of books I wanted to read. For me, spending all my time in the military and being in that world, I enjoyed reading like Tom Clancy's Red Storm and Harold Coyle's Teen Yankee. I enjoyed those kinds of books, but nobody was writing those kinds of books. So I said, well, I will write those kinds of books, and that's what we did. And it started to take off. And then the friction started to develop, because I know how to write that. I know what that material is. I know how the verbiage and terminology is supposed to go. My wife does not. She wants to make a change. I'm like, no, you can't do that. And there's this whole infighting, and that caused a lot of friction. But eventually we started to figure things out.
So just so you know, we haven't gotten divorced yet. So I'm gonna claim the
Yeah.
We're still alive, you know, there's no physical injuries. This is like, you know, it's not perfect,
Yeah.
but we're here, people.
You're gonna raise your voice, you're gonna get mad, you're gonna argue back and forth. That's normal, because that's the normal, you know, tug and pull and friction that has to happen. And at the end of the day, you're just gonna have to figure out a way to work through it though. You're not each other's enemy. You may yell at each other like you are, but at the end of the day, you're not the enemy. They're just pointing out something that you're not thinking about or catching. And you may be doing the same thing to them. And so you need to be receptive to that. And sometimes you may just have to say, all right, well, we're going to agree to disagree on this right now. Or you know what, let's talk about this later and come back to it. But there are ways to make it work. I'm not going to say it's easy, and you're going to argue and fight a lot, especially in the early years while you figure it out. Even later on, you're still going to have some issues here and there. But at some point, you're going to develop a rhythm and a way of making it work. And that's what we're going to try to go over a little bit of what we have found does work, and hopefully you can take parts of what we do and make it yours, because that's what it comes down to. Is throughout this whole conference, you're going to hear a lot of different ways of doing things. There's no right or wrong way. There's what works for you. And what's going to work for you is uniquely different from us and from everyone else. We're just going to show you what's working for us, and you decide what will work from this person, and this person. Just cherry pick all the information, make it yours.
Yep.
That's really what you got to do. You know? And none of us are competition. Don't think that, okay? None of you guys can create enough. You write my genre. None of you can create enough books to fill my genre that it will push me out. And I can't do that for you either. So, you know, that's a mindset everyone's got to accept and really that you're not each other's competition either.
You're here.
All right, so, okay, who here likes The Office or has watched The Office, knows about The Office? Thank you, okay. I edit a lot of our books to
Every
The
book's been
Office.
edited to
Yes.
The Office.
Okay. So if you know anything about The Office, you know that there was Michael Scott and then there was Jim, and they were co-managers for a little while, right? And what was the deal? Michael Scott was the big picture guy, right? And Jim was the day-to-day. Day-to-day operations, right? So, Michael Scott, Jim. Okay. Opposites attract. So go ahead and hit the next slide. So, you know, we got opposites attract. That's that one.
Right here.
Okay. Opposites attract, and that's a good thing. He's not me, and I'm not him. And that's a very important thing for you guys to figure out right away. Please do not try to change each other into the other person. It is not going to work, okay? He is much, much better at big picture stuff and figuring out strategy of the business and where we're going to be in 5 years and you know, where the series should end up and all of that. But if you give me some scenes and tell me I want you to kill off this character and I want you to happen like this, I'm really great at putting my nose into the grindstone and getting it done for you. That's just that, you know, I'm the details person. Do not ask him the difference between a colon and a semicolon. He does not know.
Never go around, forget it, I'm done. I just write, I hire editors for that.
So, but I do. And so then I handle all of the back and forth between the editor, because why would he do that? That makes absolutely no sense. That's just forcing him to try to work on, you know, he eventually gets better at certain things, but for me to make that his primary goal and task is just trying to force something, you know, it's a round hole, I'm trying to force a square thing through it. It's not going to happen. So he's big picture, I'm better at the details. Look at yourselves and figure out what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses. There are some things that you should always leave to the professionals, okay? Do not design your own cover unless you just happen to have a background in graphic design, okay? If that was your previous job before you moved into this, cool, okay? If not, please hire somebody, okay? If you are not a professional editor, I would highly, highly recommend that you get a professional editor. And if you do not have a background in accounting, I highly recommend that you get an accountant, because you really do not want to get audited. That sucks. I'm just saying.
And the one thing to keep in mind is that you've got to look at this as this is a business. Now I understand if you haven't published a book yet, or you've only published one or two, you may not think of it like a business. But you need to start mentally thinking like this is a business. Your book is a product, and the reader is a consumer, and they are going to consume and read that product. And they're going to be a good product that they want to buy more of and tell their friends about, or they're not going to have a good experience and they're going to leave you a negative review and it's going to hurt. And some reviews can be very painful. So you want to look at it from that approach. The other thing is, say you didn't take this quite as serious as you should, and your book rockets off to the moon. And next thing you know, you've got a deposit coming from Amazon for $60,000 or $70,000 a month. And that may sound like a wild amount, but I can tell you that does happen. We've hit those numbers before. That's a crap ton of money that suddenly gets deposited in your account. That's going to get flagged. Okay, Your bank's going to say, hey, you look like you're a business. Where's your EIN number? You need to set up a business account. And you're going to be like, what? And then set it up. And then the bank's going to actually flag that to the IRS. The IRS will go, whoa, hey, you made a lot of money. Have you reported this to the IRS yet? And all that other stuff. So there's a whole daisy chain of things that can happen if your book is to tip off and you're not fully prepared for it. So don't go into this trying to think you are a jack of all trades and a master of none, because the master of none is what's going to kill you. You want to bring in expertise when you're able to afford it. I understand starting right off, you can't always afford to have the best cover designer, the best editor, things like that. Our first book, I think I used Fiverr for my book cover and probably paid like $25 for it or $50 for it. But I'll tell you what, as soon as it started to make some more money and you started to bring in more income, we professionalized the heck out of that stuff really quick.
You're not, like, you can recover whenever you can afford to recover. You don't have to stick with your old covers forever, you know?
Yeah, and same with like your blurb for your book and editing. Sure, you're using family and friends and some beta readers like that to help you. But when your book starts making, several $1,000s a month, $8,000 or $9,000 a month, there's really no excuse for you not to start spending a little bit more money on some professional editing, because you have to remember, if you convince the person to buy book 1, that honestly is easy to do. The hard part is to convince them to buy book 2. And that's only going to happen if book 1 was a good product and convince them to buy book 2.
So basically, here's my general thought. There's a lot of different aspects of the business, and some of these have sub-points, but you really just need to sit down and do an inventory of all of the different parts of the business that there are. Series planning, writing, you can tag team the writing. We both do write, but you have to figure out who's going to write what and how is that going to happen. Research, sometimes he will send me on some research for specific things. Our genres are very heavily research oriented. So sometimes he'll be like, I need to find out, give me an example of something you need me to research.
So I write military techno thrills is one genre, and then I was really stupid and glutton for punishment. I tried to start a military sci-fi series at the same time. And they're both crushing and doing great. They're both diametrically different. One is very, very technical and heavy research, and one is not. So when I write a war scenario here, and I have the United States pitted against China, well, if I'm using this specific piece of Chinese technology, you really need to know what kind of caliber weapon this is. How far can it effectively shoot? Can it actually hit this thing that you're trying to say it can? The aircraft that's attacking it, well, what kind of munitions does it use? How does that work? What kind of, does it have a targeting pod on it? All these little technical details, they don't sound like a big deal, but I'm telling you, for people who read that material, it's a huge deal. And when you can be the author that nails those details and gets that stuff right, that is a book that just sings, and people love that. And then they share with all their friends, and because there's a lot of people who don't. They don't put in the effort to get those details right. So the ones that do are the ones that really stand out. And there are times where I'm crushing something. It's just like, all right, Miranda, I need you to really dig into this piece of technology, look this up. Well, we had one scenario where they were popping satellites in space, and like, okay, well, Kessler effect. Okay, that's going to happen. What are some theories on how to fix that problem? One of them involved using small ground-based lasers to zap it and cause it to spin, or the objects to spin, so they'll eventually spin and fall back into Earth. And that's one way of cleaning up it. So it's researching and looking at what are some alternative ways to fix a problem you created in your book that a reader may already know about or could easily research and verify. And when you've done that, that's really neat, because a lot of readers who commented to us, they're like, holy cow, I felt like I was really in that scene there, because when I write a scene in a village or a town or whatever, I go to Google Earth and I go down to the maps, street level, and I will look, and I can see what they all are, and I can write into the scene this building, that name of that place there, on this street, and there's different things there. And it's as if you were right there. Well, technically I am with Google Earth, but that's really cool.
So I put editing on here. You should have ideally more than one editor in your process, meaning like you should look through it yourself. You should probably have a professional editor. You should have some beta readers too, if you can get some beta readers to look at it. The thing is, the more eyeballs that are on your work, the better. You have to be careful, obviously, with beta readers to make sure that there's, safeguards in place. They're not stealing your work and putting it out there as their own. But there's different layers to it. Some people are going to catch something that somebody else didn't. It doesn't matter how many times I send it out to different people. Someone will always catch something that the editor, the developmental editor, the line copy editor, myself, and 5 other beta readers did not catch. There's always something. I handle a lot of that back and forth with the editor. Again, that's just, it's more of my strong suit. Marketing is a big thing that you can kind of break down into a lot of different aspects. So, if you're interested in the whole direct sales thing and the Kickstarter and the Patreon and all of that stuff, maybe one person takes over the Patreon and another person takes over the Kickstarter. One person's great at the AMS and one person's doing the AMG ads and one person's good with the Facebook. So you just got to kind of figure out what's your strengths, what's your weaknesses. The point of this though is try to not make it so that one person is just handling every single aspect of it and so burdened down that he's really the main author, but I'm trying to take some of that burden so that he still has some of the creativity left to write, because if he's having to do all of these other aspects of the business as well as the writing, that leaves a lot less time for him to do writing. There's the emails to your list. I've started taking that over more recently. I'm better with the technical writing. So if it's like a copy ad blurb or if it's a book description.
I'm just wordy in my emails. I'll send them a 3-page email. I can't do that.
Yeah.
2 paragraphs or something.
So I've started taking over the newsletters because I'm just better with more technical writing. Interacting with the fans tends to be more his thing. I'm not from the military, and all of his fans want to talk to him about their military stuff. And so I let him handle a lot of that because I just don't share that experience. Paying the bills, someone's got to do it, right? Coordinating with co-authors, if you go that route, you have to kind of have lanes in that as well.
I would recommend really not doing that necessarily early on, at least. Really focus on your own craft, focus on your own brand and building your own stuff, because when you publish your book, whoever's the lead author, so for us, we publish under my pen name that we use. And we've been doing that with 34 books now for the last 7 years. So all of the data that Amazon's algorithm associates us with is under that pen name. So if we flip it and put Miranda first, it doesn't have any data behind it. It's a co-author, it's just not going to have any data to it. So when we use my pen name there, it's going to hit all of the past historical data. It's going to send it out to my past readers on that new book alert. That's all going to go out. So your priority is building your data. If you start co-writing with others, that's not going to either help you or help them. It's only one of the guys, whoever's the lead. So you want to make sure that you're focused on you.
So there's probably stuff I didn't put on this list. There's subgenres of all of these different aspects of the business. Do an inventory with yourselves, figure it out. I think a lot of times a lot of friction could be solved by just proactively looking at what needs to be done and then divvying it up so that there's open expectations of what's going to happen instead of expecting people to do things and then they don't even know that that's being expected of them, right? Okay, you want to hit the next one?
Yep.
All right. A good PA can save your marriage. Yes. Okay. A PA could handle your Library of Congress filing, your copyright filing, your coordination with the cover artist, putting royalty reports together for co-authors, website management, email list management. If you get to a point where it's just too much for you, I seriously recommend getting a PA.
Yeah, someone, one of the authors, I can't remember his name now, this was quite a number of years ago, he was telling me, he says, the best thing you can do is outsource as much of your life as possible so you can focus on the income generating aspects of your business. So for me, the two things that earn us money is writing the new content and putting a lot of time into marketing. So I probably spend at least 10-15 hours a week, deep inside the Amazon data as far as AMS and the AMG platform. So I'm really heavy on that. And then writing, research and writing. So if I have 40 hours of dedicated writing time. Of the 40 hours, probably 15 of it's research, 25 is writing. It's just the way, the nature of the things, the way it goes. It's what I write. Sometimes it's more writing. It depends on what it is I'm researching or writing that specific moment for that specific scene that I'm trying to create and do. Or what genre I'm actually. The sci-fi is a lot less research intensive than the techno thrillers are. But it's outsourcing those things that you don't need to do. So we didn't work with a PA for a long time, and that was probably one of our biggest sources of friction, because I was assuming that she was doing more than she was, and she was assuming I was doing some of it, or things were just getting dropped and not getting taken care of.
And just as a side note, we have 3 kids, okay? And I handle
3,
a lot of
7,
that.
and 9, okay?
Yeah.
So there we go.
Yeah, and the 3-year-old's in a running phase. She likes to run really a lot, I have to chase her everywhere and keep her out of things. She cut her own bangs the other day,
And mind you, we were dealing with, when COVID happened, our daughter was born just before COVID. Then she was a baby and a toddler through COVID, and then our other daughter was in 1st grade and suddenly had to come home and do the Zoom thing. We just had to homeschool her after that. Our son is also autistic, and so we had him thankfully he was in his Montessori school was open that period, thank God, and able to continue on with that. But that's challenging. You've got kids, and you're also having to work full time, and you're home. Your kids are home. So you got to figure out how you're going to make that work. And that's where we got a PA, we started working with her in January this year. That was huge, because suddenly we were able to say, okay, here's a litany of tasks that need to get done before every book goes out. Library of Congress, copywriting, all that material there. There's getting your cover for ebook, that's easy. Well, now the ebook's getting close to being done, you gotta get that print cover done. And whether it's softbound or hardbound or both, you gotta get that done. You get the back of the cover stuff taken care of, all that stuff uploaded. So that way your ebook isn't coming out, and I'm looking at her going, hey, when is the freaking, paperback coming out? People are emailing me, she's like, oh, forgot all about it. How many books are we gonna publish where the paperback and the ebook are gonna be like 2-3 weeks apart from each other? It's like, trying to coordinate and get all that stuff taken care of, because it's a lot. It's a lot. You are managing an entire business. You're the marketing, you're the publisher and the editor and the writer, and interacting with fans and doing all this stuff, and then you're also a parent. So it's a lot. You're going to feel overwhelmed. If you give up the tasks and outsource things when you can, it becomes a little more manageable.
All right, next one. So kind of along the same lines, unspoken expectations cause a lot of strife, right? So we started doing this thing more recently, which has been very helpful, where we do daily check-ins. We're like, okay, this is what I just got done, yesterday. This is what I'm about to start working on. And sometimes he'll say like, oh wait, hold up, before you do that, this emergency thing happened. Oh, you gotta fix that right now. Oh, okay. And so then I'll readjust my priorities for the day. Then, at the end of the day, we kind of do a recap. This is what I did get done. This is what I didn't get done. And, we'll just kind of recap everything. I will say that putting notifications, like share a Google Calendar, that saves a lot of conversations that you don't have to have. Do a weekly recap maybe, looking ahead, what needs to happen. And then write things down, because a lot of times things get said, you're kind of distracted, you're not necessarily like ready to hear things, especially if you start spouting out a lot of numbers, you may not remember them all. So write things down, it just saves a lot of trouble. You want to hit the next one? Okay, respect differences in your workspace. We all have our own writer mojo, right? Everyone has their way that they like to work and be comfortable, and mine's very different from his. I'm a coffee shop writer. I like to have noise around me. I literally have a recording on my phone that I did when I went to Panera, just so that I can listen to people chatting when I'm working. Like, that's just how I am, okay? He's the library worker. He likes it to be deadly silent. And if I am in a library, every single sound that I hear is going to distract me. It's going to drive me nuts. So it's just not great. So, working together in the same office, I want to listen to something, he wants to listen to nothing. So you have to kind of figure out how to make that work. Let's go to the next
one. So what I do is I have, I bought a really nice, expensive Bose noise canceling sound system. So it's either Bose or Sony, one or the other. Spend the money, okay? It may cost $350, whatever it is. It's going to be worth it. Get a noise canceling headphones on. Because if I cannot get the silence I want, and I find some sort of music, whether it's with lyrics or without, or just something like that, I listen to it really loud, so I don't hear squat around me. And that way I'm able to zone that out, and I can just focus on what I'm doing.
So a couple more practical suggestions is to have more than one work area in your home or your office, if at all possible. We were in a really tight house before we moved last year, and we didn't even really have an office. He was working in the garage, okay?
It was okay, but Florida's a little hot in summer.
Yeah. We had an AC unit in there, but it was only getting it down to like 80, okay? It's just not great. So we now have a home that has a little bit of a better situation. Our bedroom is large enough to have like a chair in it. So there's that area, and then there's also the actual office. So sometimes it's great because he needs to do a call. I don't want to be in the room when he's doing a call. Who wants to listen to that when they're trying to write, right? So if you can have more than one alternate place to write, that would be helpful. So like this is we have two different areas of our house, and consider alternate schedules sometimes. He likes to work late at night, early in the morning, when there's no kids around, nobody's there demanding attention. He likes it quiet. I prefer to work during the day when my brain actually works. So we have some pictures to show you. This is our different office spaces.
This is upstairs in the office.
So this is upstairs in the office. It's kind of funny. So I'm wearing the fingerless gloves because I'm cold all the time. He's hot all the time. He's got his t-shirt on, right? This is just how it is. But we figured it out how to make it work for us. My desk is always a little messy. His desk is a little less messy, but it's my desk and it's his desk, and that's just how it is, okay?
I have two workstations, so depending on doing a lot of editing or maps, then I want to be on my desktop where I have a bigger screen, and I can have side-by-side stuff going on. If I'm doing actual writing, hard writing time, I'm in my Lazy Boy. It's super comfortable. I love the Lazy Boy rocking chair. That's what I sit in and I write. Because it's super comfortable, because I'm going to be sitting in that thing for 6 or 8 or 10 hours. I want to be comfortable. Because I'm sorry, I can't sit in an office chair like hunched over like this for 8 hours. Your back hurts after a while. So, you got to get comfortable.
Yeah, and you may have to switch it up. We used to do a lot more writing retreats back when we had a smaller house. He would go away to an Airbnb for a couple of days, or I would go away to an Airbnb for a couple of days. And sometimes you need to do that. You need to change up your setting. You need to have some kind of like just change it up. So now we're over here into establishing healthy boundaries. Okay, here's something we're still trying to work on a little bit, actually. I think it's really healthy to have definite off times. And that's really hard to do in this business in general. But I personally, this is like my own thing, I do not work on Saturday, okay? This is just my thing, I do not work on Saturday. From Friday night at sundown until Saturday night at sundown, I do not work unless like the business will implode, okay? And it kind of got a little hard for him to get used to that. He would keep coming to me and trying to talk to me about business. I'd be like, nope, this is Saturday. So unless the business is going to die, don't come to me, it's Saturday, okay? So I think it's also good to have needs for transition times because, for example, I am like in mom mode between like 8 and 8:30. I'm trying to get those kids down to bed. It takes forever. It always takes forever. And then after that, I need to have like 15, 20 minutes where I'm fiddling around on my phone or I'm watching an episode of The Office or something like that to get my head back into Workspace before I go back to second job. At first, he used to come to me immediately, like the kids are down. He's like, okay, here's the work thing I've been waiting to tell you about for the last 2 hours. No. Just give me my time. 15 minutes, I'll come to you, and then I will be ready, and we can actually get some stuff done, okay? Don't say yes when you know you can't deliver. I had some problems with this myself. You know, if you know that you can't do it, don't say yes. And then recognize when you're getting overworked, because we all get there. All right, next thing. Looking back. All right, so we've made mistakes, all right? We did not hire a PA soon enough. We moved last year. A lot of that physical aspect of the moving fell on me, and then I ended up dropping some balls during that time. He's had 3 hip replacements, okay? So like moving boxes and packing boxes, that's me. We probably didn't set up healthy boundaries early enough about these are my off times, and this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm not doing. And we tried to change each other to be more like us. So don't be like us, be like you, okay? All right, next thing. Looking forward. So we are planning some real vacations where the computers do not come along. Yes.
Yeah.
We're working on better communication and realizing when we need help. And we're trying to plan a more realistic schedule to maintain sanity. You can write too many books in a year. This is a thing. Yeah. You can get to a point where you're burnt out, you know?
Not a race.
It's not a race. Remembering that you're partners and not enemies. And I saved a little bit of time at least. Who has some questions? Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about how there are a lot of PAs out there and a lot of forums to shop for PAs, how you approach that search and defining what you're looking for?
Find the one that's already working with authors. Find an author who uses one and then see if their PA is open to taking more on. Because you want a PA that's already working with authors because they're going to know what needs to be done. And I wouldn't hire a PA unless that PA is working for authors you've heard of or know as well.
Yeah.
I mean, ours has already worked with a handful of other authors, 6-figure authors, and so she knew what she was doing.
Nice.
But we didn't have to train her. She knew what she needed to do, and she had a litany of things. Well, this is what I offer, this is what I do. We're like, okay, well, this is what we need. Okay, no problems. I know how to do all those things. Here's what I need access to. Give her all the credentials and access she needs to do everything, so she can get in our KDP accounts and upload and do everything that needs to be done there, and all that kind of stuff. But it's scheduling a book promo, or it's paying price or whatever.
Really recommend personal recommendation because a person who is a PA is going to have access to a lot of things, and you want to be sure that you trust that person.
Yeah. Better make sure you know how to trust them. They're going to have access to your KDP account, or maybe give them access to that. So make sure you've got that, whatever agreements you need in place, or if you want NDAs, whatever you need, make sure you have that stuff.
Yeah.
How often are you guys talking to your accountant? Is it like quarterly, weekly, once a year?
At least monthly.
Yeah, at least monthly. You know,
Kind of once or twice a month.
they usually send us a few things of like I saw this charge on the account, but I don't know what that is, and you have to do some of that back and forth with that. And then there's the quarterly filings for the business.
These are monthly P&Ls and balance sheet statements and things like that. I want to know that, at least the monthly ones, because I want to be able to track very specific expenses of what I'm doing. You know, there's months when I'm burning through stupid money on marketing. And other months where I managed to pull it back. Well, I want to know, am I more profitable this month than I was last month, and how am I looking for the end of the year? I may be wildly negative for the first 6 months of the year, but it's okay if I know what's coming out in the last half of the year and I can pull it back up again.
Yeah, did you have a question?
Yeah, I guess following up on the accountant thing, recommend getting an accountant that works in that industry, because like I'm in a business right now where like that accountant, like he's deals with people in that industry, but essentially for a book writing business, like would you get an accountant that?
Not necessarily. Ours doesn't. We're the only authors he works with.
Yeah, I mean, I think accounting is accounting. I'm not really sure that it has to be super specific for authors. It's just as long as they know corporate accounting, versus
But
just
we're an S
personal.
corporation. That's how
Yeah.
we filed. Our company's an S corp. So that's what we did. We pay ourselves as W-2 employees. You just way easier that way because it's easier to qualify for loans and car loans and mortgages, things like that.
I think, if you're going to do an S corp, probably good to have somebody who does both. That they do personal and business, because it does carry over if you do an S corp.
Yeah, I mean, personal back.
Yeah.
First off, I wish I'd met you guys 7 years ago. This was really helpful. So my husband's a space operator, and I'm a virtual assistant full time.
Okay.
So we struggle where like I know what he needs to do, like when he needs to do it.
Right.
He's the creative one. We struggle a lot with like marketing
Yeah.
because it's like I can't be him. I don't have his like persona, his personality, and so it's like we struggle because I'm like, well, you should be the one on TikTok because people don't want to see me. Like I'm your wife, I do the back end stuff. That's where I want to hide and hang out. But like, how do you guys handle that? Because it sounds like you co-write, you co-author the books.
Mm-hmm.
But it's military, it's space military, that kind of genre. So how do you guys handle like the marketing aspect of like who's the face of the brand, that kind
Pretty
of
much
stuff?
me. I handle all that. Yeah.
We have done some like joint Facebook Live sessions and some joint YouTube videos and stuff like that. But it really, it is him because of the reason you're saying as far as, this is your voice and you're trying to reach the specific type of an audience. Now, something like a newsletter, you could probably handle that. If he gives you like, okay, this is coming out, and then you write the newsletter, especially because, you probably have like pictures of your pets and things like that, things that you guys are involved in, and you could share a picture of, like, we went to this cool hike, or we went to go do this thing, we went on vacation. So you can write that kind of stuff and sort of speak for him, and it wouldn't be as weird. But I think if it's an actual live thing, like on TikTok or on YouTube, you probably want to get him
Yeah,
involved
you
in
basically
that.
want to have like, you want to do, if you're writing it, we got the new book out, set up and do a Q&A where your readers can send in questions and do a Facebook Live or a YouTube record a YouTube thing for it or something along those lines where you just take in their questions and answer them. Or you lay out, okay, so we went over and did this in the book, here's where we're going next. Give them some of that kind of information, let them see what you're doing, explain the process, talk about some cool new technology that just came out that may help lead to whatever it is you're writing in the future. We write, so a lot of our stuff is near future military thrillers. We write and talk a lot about artificial intelligence, drones and autonomous warfare, things like that. So a lot of what we saw in Ukraine, Russia, we've been writing about that stuff for 5-6 years. So it's neat to be able to see how that plays out.
We're running close on time. I just want to make sure we get a couple more questions.
How do you guys handle like the decision making of what in life doesn't need to be done? Like you've got 3 kids, and like in my household, like I'm not as great with executive functioning and whatever. So like, how did you kind of decide like where was your priority markers?
I will tell you right now, my house is always messy, okay? It's always messy. It's hygienic, but it's messy, okay? Like, we actually have someone that we hire to come once every other week to do like the bathrooms and that kind of stuff so that it will be hygienic, okay? So that's important to me as a former nurse. I don't want it to be disgusting when people come to my house, but there will always be clutter. Like, we just, it's just how it is.
It comes out of time management too. You
Yeah.
just look at it and say, okay, well, it costs me $100 a month to have one of our neighbors take care of the lawn. So he cuts the lawn, trims it up, makes it look really nice, takes care of the bushes and the trees and everything like that. For $100, for me not to have to go out there in the Florida heat and deal with that for several hours and maintain the equipment and do all that, it's worth the $100 for me to do that because I get that time back and time that I can work on writing. The same thing with, hiring a cleaner. She doesn't want to be discussing like that. Well, I personally can't afford for her to spend 4 or 5 hours a week or whatever it takes doing all that. I would rather pay the money to hire someone else to do that and take care of that for us. And when we looked at childcare, you figure out how much childcare costs. It's sometimes cheaper to W-2 your, a childcare worker and make them an executive assistant for your company to handle your kids than it is to pay for 2 kids to go to daycare or something like that. That's what we did.
That's what we do.
And now, in our nanny, whatever, she drives our son to school and picks him up and handles our other 2 kids. That works. It's cheaper than daycare, way more effective.
I can handle one more question, and then we can give you guys cards or something, and we can interact on afterwards. Yes.
Yeah, just piggybacking on that, like, our baby's a year old now, which is great. But, like, I've literally gotten note writing done this year. It's like, how do you, literally 10 pages, whatever many words that is. So, how, with 3 kids and a 2-year-old.
You gotta figure out what you're gonna give up. I mean, at the end of the day, you can't. It's like going to college. You can't go to college at night school and think that you're somehow gonna still play intramural sports and do all these other things you used to do before. You can't.
Yeah.
You have to determine what am I gonna give up. So you have 24 hours in a day. So you figure out, okay, if I'm gonna sleep 6 hours a day, that leaves me 18 hours. So out of 18 hours, how many of that am I gonna dedicate to work, writing, family? That's it.
We don't watch a lot of TV
I work 7 days a
anymore.
week doing it.
Yeah, we
It's
just,
my job. So.
He works every day of the week. I don't. That's my personal boundary. I just will not. I'm with the kids on the weekends, the majority of the time. We go to church together and we do certain things together. But I have the kids on the weekends. That's me. Okay, and we just figure it out. Sometimes we get to do things together. Sometimes we don't. We have to kind of plan it and make it work for us. But he'll take out breaks, go take our daughter to, go get the mail and little interactions, kind of throughout. Or, he'll take a break and give our youngest a bottle of milk while she watches her Paw Patrol. You just kind of have to make it the little stuff count.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got 24 hours. So even if I'm working 4 hours on Saturday, 4 hours on Sunday, that does make a difference in the business. Mm-hmm. It's only 4 hours out of 24. Mm-hmm. You also have no commute. So I'm not driving to an office anymore. I'm not losing that time. It's very easy to find time for things like that. You just have to start cutting things out that are time sucks.
Yeah.
And it honestly it comes down to TV and movies. We squander so much watching TV, movies, playing computer games, little things like that. They just chew up your time. It's hard to disconnect and cut away from that, but once you make that hard cut and you're able to do that, you free up a lot of time.
And I will say also with the social media specifically, because I think everyone gets sucked into this, set times for that. Don't be on that all day long, because you'll be writing and then all of a sudden you get this message from somebody, I have to respond to that right now. No, you don't. You can say, okay, my office hours for interacting with fans are this to this, and maybe have a few of them throughout the day, but I'm not going to be doing this all day long, because otherwise I'm in the middle of a scene and suddenly I get a message from Susie Q about this one, 1-star review, and I really want to respond to that. Then you get stuck. I think we're done for now. If anyone wants to grab one of my cards, you can email me. We can keep in touch.